Handle Black Text Like a Pro by Ndumi Hadebe. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Focuses on the concept known as black text. This is in the black community. And on a basic level, this is unspoken financial assistance older relatives might expect from younger relatives, and how that relates to us in an emotional way, and how we can set boundaries with our finances regarding black tax. I just want to preface this and say Ndumi goes ahead and expands this concept of black tax to include friendships. So that's another nice thing that she did there. The book goes through 10 stories, each of which real life situations as she presented to us. And I think anyone can relate to any one of these 10 stories, because it goes from the perspective of a father, a mother, a sister, a brother, and even friends. And also, there are corporate situations that are involved, and there's very good lessons that you can get from that. She then gives actionable advice after each of these stories in relation to what had happened in the story, and tries as much to sort of like weave lessons through with regards to the story that you get caught. Before I get into the book, I would like to say, obviously, this is a very condensed summary of the topic. If you want to get all information that she said, it's in the book. But obviously, she explains the necessity of this and the origins, and how we as a black community got to this situation, and why sometimes it is something that can be good to do. It's a good thing to do in families, right? So I'm not gonna get much into that, but if you're interested, she goes in depth with regards to that. I would also like to say another thing. She says that black text is not an exclusively black community phenomena anymore. She explains that there are increasingly people from other races or other groups of ethnicities rather, that are experiencing this thing that we so call black tax. So essentially, having read the book, to me it feels more like a boundaries book. I think it is a boundaries book that's more tailored to the black tax type of issues. So what Ndumi did is sort of like tailor the principles that the principles that you can read in the book called Boundaries, specific to these situations, right? But it also combines finances, so it's like financial boundaries type of thing. But it leans more on boundaries. She even says so herself in the intro that this book is more on boundaries than finances. I won't go deep into the 10 stories because there are a lot and I don't want to spoil it, but I will extract important pieces of information that I've gotten from the reflections that she calls after each of these stories, and I'll share some of the information that I got that resonates. So the first concept that resonated with me is the concept of personal truth. So this was in relation to one of the first stories in the book, but I forgot what this specifically was about. But the concept of personal truth goes like so. She explains basically to understand how the decisions that you're making make you feel, right? How do you feel when you're executing the decision? How do you feel after the decision? And also, she mentions the concept of personal truth with regards to the actual impacts that it has on your life, right? Because she alludes to how sometimes we can be numb to some of these decisions. We just kind of take on some roles and responsibilities without actually stopping, pausing, and actually analyzing how it's making us feel, how it's affecting our daily lives, and most importantly, how it's affecting our finances. Another fun tidbit, this is just a small thing, is she mentions something called the cost of not knowing, right? The cost of not knowing, which is sort of like a stupid tax, right? Dave Ramsey talks of stupid tax all the time. So this is like the amount of loss that you get from not knowing certain pieces of information, or rather, the amount of loss that you get from not executing certain practices that you would have known for years. That would have benefited you if you executed them earlier. So she goes on to mention that that is something that a lot of people are going to incur for a long time if they're not wise enough to actually implement what they're being told, or what they're learning rather. I think this part was with regards to, I think, a lady who paid a lot of money for a financial course, but it turned out to be basic information. But I'm really rough on that. To go and read the book. Another important aspect that she points out is she questions normalization of certain practices in African society. For example, I think there was a story of how the son took the responsibilities of the father when the father passed away, which is a normalized thing in African society, which means the older son now, quote unquote, runs the family and is responsible for financially taking care of the rest of the people, right? And it's sort of like one of those unspoken rules or unspoken practices that we as African society partake in. It might actually be spoken because it's something that is expected, so I'll say it's spoken. So she opens the conversation with regards to that. In connection with the last aspect of normalization, also comes in the aspect of self-sacrifice, which she also mentions. I think this was another story, but it relates to the normalization issue, which was about a sibling and older sister who had paid for both of her younger sisters university, and you know how it goes right from there. She mentioned about how we can, quote unquote, think outside the box with regards to certain situations, although she does acknowledge that at some points, right in the moment, the immediate thing to do, the less, I'll say less, the decision that requires less thinking, less critical thinking rather, or less decision making would be made the most, right? So that is another aspect that she mentions. I couldn't find the words for that. Another useful concept that she highlights, and I think this is a very important chapter that resonates more with the young group. And this chapter was called Friends Who Refuse Adulting, I think. And this was with black text with regards to friendships, expectations, society expectations with regards to friends. How when you start making certain decisions about your money, there's gonna be a quote unquote fallout. Not a fallout as in a hateful fallout, but simply a change in lifestyle might actually lead to rift, an unspoken rift between friends, and that's something that is she highlights through the story that is mentioned, the story that she tells in that chapter. It was a bunch of friends, I think two friends, one who decided to sort of like clean up finances, the other one decided to do the thing. It's something that resonates a lot, especially with regards to how we as young people are living in this era of social media, sort of expectations, online expectations of where you are and stuff like that. So I think I'll say this is a defining chapter for the book for me. But yeah, there are other interesting chapters, of course. Another very important aspect that she mentions is the choice of living differently, right? So this is basically another story. It's connected to another story, and she communicates that sometimes our different choices of living, especially with regards to the younger generation, the younger people, may come across as not fitting of the normal path that certain people are supposed to take, right? And she goes on to mention that the narrative of, and this is something that I think a lot of people would resonate with, narrative of saying or thinking that we must live our lives the way our parents exactly did, and whatever they did we must also do, whatever commitments they made we must also make, whatever sacrifice they made we must also make in our lives. And she goes on to say that there is a liberating there's a liberating aspect with regards to choosing to live your life differently. And what the story behind this, I remember there's a person called Tendai and his brother, and they were Tendai and his brother were living two completely different lives, and Tendai just chosen to take care of his things the way he wanted to, but he was expected to chip in for his brother, and obviously for him it got a bit more annoying. But also Tendai liked to live a bit, I don't want to say he lived flamboyantly, but he just had a different lifestyle. So that came into question with regards to the family. But that's just one piece of information. I want to review the whole story. So this is the some of the information that I got. Obviously there's more information that I got other than this, but this is just a summary of some of the more important points that kind of stuck with me in my head. But at the end of the book, not the very end, but she gives 3 important steps that she mentions on how to navigate black tax struggles. And the first one is honesty in expressing feelings, which goes back to the your personal truth. She mentions when communicating some of these issues, whether with your friends or family, she mentions it's important to come from a point of love and compassion, which that is self-explanatory, right? And the last important point she mentions is, and this is very important, something that I learned from the book, is you have to let go of the need of being right or correct when dealing with such issues, which is, I'm like, wow. Like it's something that that's so obvious so when you read it, but when you actually get it communicated to you in such a manner, and be like, oh, okay. And I think this is very, very important to communicate your personal truth and also to live the way you want to live, because there's no right way of doing it, right? This also ties in the concept of choosing to live your life differently, because there's no right or wrong way to do it, right? Everyone just chooses to live the way they live. So letting go of this concept of being, okay, I'm doing this is the correct way, or I'm communicating this is the wrong way, or I'm feeling right or I'm feeling wrong about this, that has to go. So that was pretty solid. So just to end it off, I think this book has very interesting stories. Some of them I remember, some of them I do not. I obviously remember the young adult friends one. I remember the story about Tendai and his brother. I remember the story about the lady with the siblings, and there's also another story about the lady whose inheritance got challenged by some of the other relatives. So I'll say the stories there are pretty interesting, and it's something that you understand if you live in an African society. Be like, oh, I've seen that before, or some of us will be like, oh, I've been in this situation before. So I'll say the stories are pretty interesting, and I guarantee you, like, obviously they'll resonate, right? But in my opinion, I think this is more of a boundaries book. I think that is one thing that she hammers on. It is a boundaries book, and I think if you're someone who is pretty strong on boundaries and practices that on a daily, this book will probably do little to nothing, because you would have probably been practicing the concept that she mentioned in the book. But the stories are amazing though. If you want to get it for the stories, that's good. If you also want to have if you want sort of like a guide on more targeted implementation of boundaries with regards to say finance, or like the black tax situation, or whatever situation you find yourself in regards to finances, this is a very good book. But yeah, it's amazing. This is the first time I've read a non-fiction book from an African author. I'm proud of myself for that. But I will say, I'll definitely recommend this to anyone. It's a very good read. All right, thank you for watching. That's about it for me. Cheers.